hello, welcome to the Social Justice Forum. I am your host, Daren Jaime. We thank you for joining us. Now, if you're asking the question, what is the show about? We bring you a forum that discusses and provides a deeper understanding of the issues and inequities that many people face. From systemic inequalities to pressing social problems, our guests provide multiple perspectives and insights, helping us better understand and address these challenges. We invite you to stay connected to us as the Social Justice Forum starts now. And welcome back. The First and Last King of Haiti is a book that's shedding light on Henry Christopher's complex and controversial story. From his humble beginnings as a child of enslaved parents to his rise as a leader in the Haitian Revolution, Christophe's journey is one of betrayal, heroism, and tragedy. Our guest brings a fresh perspective on this historical figure and the impact of his ruling, while also connecting us to Haiti's past and its present. We're pleased to be joined by the author and professor of French and African Diaspora Studies at Yale University, Dr. Marlene Daut. And we thank you so much, Dr. Daut, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And so as we talk a little bit about this writing, what inspires?
Yeah, I had been reading, I'm Haitian American, so I had been reading about the Haitian Revolution for many years. But Christophe was always kind of an elusive character. And so with The First and Last King of Haiti, I really wanted to get in depth into his life and find out who he really was, what inspired him to join the Haitian Revolution. When you think about the fact that he was actually born on the British island of Grenada, had previously fought in the American Revolutionary War at the Battle of Savannah, I wanted to find out, how did he end up in Saint-Domingue, which later becomes Haiti?
Yeah. And when we talk about him, you know, the first and the last king of Haiti and his rise there to really get to the place of becoming king, there's some background to that.
Oh, definitely. So, he does become not just a participant in the Haitian Revolution, which of course is started in August 1791, a massive slave revolt and rebellion that really, turns into full-blown revolution pretty quickly. And again, Christophe is not just a side player. He becomes a major general, one of the freedom fighters. He's kind of the right-hand man of Toussaint Louverture. And then after Toussaint Louverture is arrested and deported by the French, Christophe becomes general-in-chief of the Haitian army under Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who had declared Haiti independent on January 1st, 1804. And so Christophe has a lot of responsibilities pretty quickly. But after Dessalines is tragically assassinated in October 1806, Christophe has this moment where he's got to decide what to do. Shall he join with the conspirators who want to set up a republic, or shall he go off on his own? And he ultimately decides to flee to the north where he had been living. And eventually he sets up his own kingdom and he becomes the king of Haiti.
Yeah. And when we think about the time of Haiti, at the time of his, becoming king, give us a little bit about the background as to what was going on right around the time that he was becoming king that elevated him into the kingship.
Yes. So if we go back to the moment of Dessalines' assassination, we're really talking about kind of experimentation in governance. Dessalines had been an emperor and had declared an empire of Haiti. But Christophe and Dessalines' rival, a man named Alexandre Pétion, who had also fought during the Haitian Revolution, he really wants to experiment with the idea of a republic where you would have a president. And Christophe doesn't really agree with this. But when he flees to the north, I should mention this creates a civil war. And this civil war is going to last between the northern and southern parts of Haiti for 13 long years. So Christophe does become king in 1811, but only over part of the country in the north. And previous to that, he had actually been president over just the north. So it's this very tumultuous time in Haitian history. And then you have to think about the fact that France is still not recognizing Haitian independence and trying to invade them so that they can restore slavery, which is kind of astonishing to think about.
And for yourself, I mean, obviously taking a look at this and really being intrigued by his life, his legacy, Um, One of the things that we have to say is that there's some controversy involved too.
Absolutely. So Christophe is known for building a massive citadel. Today it's called the Citadelle La Ferrière. In his day, it was called the Citadelle Henri. This fortress sits atop one of the highest mountain peaks in Haiti. It has been widely hailed as the eighth wonder of the world. It's the largest fortress in North America, and it's meant to protect Haiti from invasion. But as you can imagine, how are you going to build such a massive structure? All of the bricks, all of the materials that have to be carted all the way up this mountain in the hot Haitian sun. And so Christophe institutes what is called a corvée, and this is labor in lieu of taxes. So if you weren't wealthy, you weren't a part of the military elite, and you couldn't pay your taxes, which you can imagine is many people, you got sent up to do labor. And so this has really kind of put an asterisk by Christophe's legacy in the minds of many who question whether or not this massive citadel can really be seen as a symbol of Black freedom and sovereignty, given the labor that was used to construct it.
Yeah. And when we talk about this fortress, obviously, as you said, a very legacy piece, if you will, that's out there in Haiti. Talk to me a little bit about the people, because there was this divided Haiti as well. And,
Yeah.
and as Haiti became divided, let's talk about what caused Haiti to become divided and where Christophe falls in.
Yeah, I mean, on the face of things, we can really see this as a contest over who is going to be in control. This is a legacy that was left behind from Toussaint Louverture when Christophe and Dessalines by turn seem to betray him. And this results in Louverture's arrest and again his deportation and his eventual death in France in a cold prison in the Jura Mountains. And when Dessalines takes the reins as emperors, the kinds of divisions that had existed under Toussaint don't evaporate. And those divisions remain when Christophe takes the reins. And his vision for Haiti is really strong, but it's opposed to the one that says Haiti should be a republic with a president and a senate. And Christophe creates, in contrast, of course, a monarchy with a nobility, with dozens of counts and dukes and barons. And it's a place of opulence and wealth, but also a place where the people aren't necessarily involved in governing themselves and in choosing their leaders.
And when we think about America and how America perceived Christophe during that time, what was it like?
Oh, goodness. So it depended greatly. So, in the southern United States, where there's still slavery, of course, lots of demonization of Christophe, making fun of the fact that he is a Black king, saying things like he apes royalty, really kind of your standard racist, stereotypical fare. But in the northern United States, interestingly enough, Christophe actually gets quite a bit of support from northern anti slavery activists and also northern merchants who are very interested in trading with Haiti, especially after Thomas Jefferson's trade embargo expires. They really see Haiti as quite a lucrative market. So it's a really regional attitude that people will hold. But in some ways, it's more astonishing that Christophe finds support in the North because there's a strongly kind of anti monarchical sentiment in the North stemming from the days of John Adams' presidency. And yet you find all of these defenses of Christophe as king and of the monarchy as a system of governance in northern US newspapers during Christophe's reign.
Yeah. And as we look at the legacy right now of Haiti and Christophe and where he stands, how would you define it?
Oh, I would say Christophe's greatest legacy is not necessarily these amazing structures he built. Along with the citadel, there was also his palace at Sans Souci, which means without worry in French. And this palace was magnificent. It was destroyed partially, unfortunately, by an 1842 earthquake and is not able to be restored. And so, on the face of things, you could say, oh, this is his greatest legacy. But I think his greatest legacy was actually his vision of Haitian sovereignty in an extremely hostile world. Because even though Great Britain and the United States are trading with Haiti during this time period, they're actually not recognizing Haitian sovereignty because they don't want to anger France and because slavery still exists on US shores and in the British colonies. And Christophe was unwilling to compromise on Haitian sovereignty. When the French kings and the Southerners are floating the idea that perhaps Haiti could pay France an indemnity as the price of freedom, as the price of French recognition of Haiti's sovereignty, Christophe uses one word. He says, inadmissible. Absolutely not. And his death in 1820 unfortunately opened the door for his successor, a man named Jean-Pierre Boyer, to kind of restart the conversation about the indemnity, which ended in a disastrous 1825 agreement whereby the Haitian government agreed to pay France 150 million francs as the price of recognition.
Amazing. And when I think about Haiti today, I know the challenges that exist. We know the challenges that exist. And the question is if they ever will get to a place of stability. Looking at where they are today, I'm going to let you be the doctor here and say, listen, how do you think Christophe would view what he sees in Haiti today?
It's difficult to say, but I would say that in terms of watching successive Haitian leaders continue to either themselves, like Boyer, compromise Haitian sovereignty or to allow Haitian sovereignty to be compromised by invading powers, such as what happened during the US occupation of Haiti from 1915 to 1934. And then, of course, subsequent occupations of Haiti in the 20th century and even in the 21st century. And I think that probably Christophe couldn't have imagined such a reality because when you read his speeches, when you read the proclamations he issues that get posted in the royal newspapers, it is all about your sovereignty is all you have. If you let go of your sovereignty, the world powers will treat you like playthings. They'll make of you slaves just as they have slaves on their shores. Remember, it's still the early 19th century. And so for him to imagine a time when Haitian leaders might care more about making nice with Western powers and giving in to the demands of the Western powers, I think this would have been inconceivable to him because when they said in this time period, early 19th century Haiti, independence or death, they actually meant it.
When you look at the Haitian leaders and you look at Haitian leaders down throughout history, how do you rank Christophe?
I think in some ways I might be a little bit biased
Possibly, yeah.
having spent 10 years, greater than 10 years studying his life. But I think in terms of vision, I would put him as number one. But in terms of means, I wouldn't rank him as highly. I think certainly he was under a lot of pressure. He had also experienced a traumatic past fighting at the age of only 12 years old in the Battle of Savannah. But at the end of the day, it's the people in a country who always suffer when their leaders make mistakes, which is, in fact, something that one of Christophe's most prominent ministers, the Baron de Vatte, wrote in his 1819 History of Haiti. And so I think we can't ever forget that, even as we're ranking leaders or wanting to prop up the good things that they did, that it does matter if people were harmed under their rule.
Yeah. And when we look at Haitian history, talk to me about the role of women and some prominent women that come to mind for you.
Yeah, well, Christophe had a wife. Her name was Marie-Louise, and she, of course, becomes the Queen of Haiti. And it's very interesting because whenever Christophe would show clemency to someone who was about to be punished, his wife might intervene and say, you need to show some mercy, some more mercy here. And she would be the one to get credit for that clemency that he's going to bestow on certain figures because it was very important to him to seem very strong. And so if there was ever a question of mercy, he would often say, it's my wife who has encouraged me to do this. Christophe also had two daughters. He was very interested in their education, which perhaps is what led him to set up a national school system that was supposed to be for boys and girls. Now, this never fully came to fruition for girls because Christophe had trouble recruiting female school teachers from abroad to come and train Haitian school teachers in the country. At the time, they believed that female students should be taught only by women. But there were also plenty of women, I just have to say, who participated in the Haitian Revolution. And we see their legacies and remnants in the histories of Haiti written by Haitians. And the last thing I would say about that is Queen Marie-Louise actually has a guard, a corps of female guards called the Amazon, and they're women, and they are dressed in a very elaborate fashion. And even though they don't engage in combat, they were kind of the talk of a certain sector of the world. They were written about in Great Britain and in the United States. So people were very fascinated by this idea of a female, corps of soldiers, quote unquote.
And when we think about that female corps of soldiers, I mean, obviously, I look at American history and I look at where, women have risen, and then now women in the military. You look at Haiti. When you look at where we are today, and you see where Haiti was, how do you reconcile? I mean, there's been much improvement in some areas, and then in many ways you can find yourself and say, when it comes to areas such as women and treatment, you might find yourself in the same place.
Yeah, I would say, it was being the early 19th century under Christophe's rule. This is not going to be a highly egalitarian society in terms of gender politics. One of the reasons that Christophe and his ministers are very interested in female education is because they say, well, women are mothers and therefore they're the child's first teacher. And so if they aren't well instructed, how will they, instruct the children well? So they have some kind of patriarchal ideas. And, it does, we must point out that Haiti doesn't have, females in positions of leadership for a really long time throughout the entire 19th century. And even in terms of writers, while the United States at this time period has a lot of women writing, Black women writing as well. Maria Stewart comes to mind, Sarah Fortin, just to name some of the 19th century Black women writers from the United States. What we see an absence of in Haiti is women writing in the public sphere. But just as in the United States, there were a lot of pseudonymous writings, people writing under pen names that could very well have been women. But at the same time, Haiti's already had a female president and the United States has never had one. So just because the beginnings start out a little bit rough in terms of gender equity and equality doesn't necessarily mean that is how things will shake out in the end.
For people who want to get more information about your book and the work that goes on, how do they do that?
Absolutely. You can buy The First and Last King of Haiti anywhere books are sold. I am partial to independent bookstores, so I always say bookshop.org contributes to independent bookstores. And you can also visit my website, which is my name, marlenedaut.com, and check out some of my other writings and resources for teachers especially.
This has definitely been a labor of love for you, right? 10 years of research?
Yeah, it has been a labor of love, but I have to say, sometimes it was grueling, but it felt worth it because I know that this story is important. I tell my students every day, the Haitian Revolution is for everyone. It is not just a story for Black people, for Black History Month. This is the story of how the world went from slavery to freedom, and everybody should know it.
Yeah. Dr. Marlene Daut, author and professor of French and African Diaspora Studies at Yale University. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All righty, we're taking a quick break. We'll be back with more coming up right after this.
Only 57% of New York City high school students are college ready by their senior year. 55% of high school graduates either have no plans to attend college or are uncertain that they will ever attend. %34% of young adults don't go to college because they can't afford it. Discover what's possible. BronxNet's education programs, internships, and opportunities help engage and inspire Bronx youth and beyond to pursue their passions. be a part of the BronxNet family. Whether you're interested in our shows, joining a class, or donating to support our mission, visit BronxNet.org to learn more.
And we are back. As inequality continues to affect low-income communities, the Poor People's Campaign is leading the charge, demanding attention and action. The fight to combat voter suppression is stronger than ever, with grassroots efforts mobilizing communities and pushing for policy reform at both local and national levels. Faith-based leadership is at the forefront, guiding advocacy and inspiring change in the face of adversity. Join me now. We've got the president of the North Carolina Council of Churches, the Reverend Dr. Hanna Broome. And Dr. Broome, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And as we talk a little bit about the work that's going on, particularly North Carolina and across the United States, obviously income is of the essence. We know a lot of people are struggling in the area of income and income equality. That fight is very prevalent, given the fact that the current government is not accommodating for this. Just give us the sense of the climate that you're feeling right now.
Thank you for that question. Yes, living wages has yet to be increased since 2009, and yet our prices for our food, our expenses, even just basic necessities has continued to increase. So living wages is of importance. It is essential for our living. I think in North Carolina, you have to have at least a base salary of coming home per month of $1,900 just to rent a one-bedroom apartment. And we're still having people live on $7.25 an hour. The price of eggs is actually more than the cost of a dozen of eggs. So that lets you know where we're at right now when it comes to our living wages, our prices of our groceries, and just essential basic necessities to live.
When we talk about the, people in low-income neighborhoods and low-income communities, first of all, it does cross racial lines, and we understand that it's not just blacks; it's really blacks and whites, and it's a mixed bag there. Give me the effects that you're finding for those people who are living in low-income communities. Just share with us a little bit about, some of the challenges that you find that people are facing right now.
People are having to make the decision of whether to buy groceries or pay rent, whether to buy medicine for their everyday life, or to just pay a light bill. So in these low-income housing where funding is being taken away from Section 8, assistant living, and these particular things, the basic right or dignity of just having shelter has become a crisis. So even in low-income housing, you're taking away the safety net of SNAP. You're taking away the safety net of Medicaid and Medicare. You're taking these essential things away that can help set off or even balance off some of the expenses of just living with medicine, just living with daycare. We're talking about all of these interconnected things in our low-income housing, low-income individuals that are living day to day. They're having to make different difficult choices of medicine or food, medicine or rent.
And I know that you're at the grassroots level as an advocate, and also, the North Carolina Council of Churches, really bringing together a coalition of churches and pastors and ministries to really address the issues of social justice. When we talk about the Council of Churches and the advocacy that's gone through social justice, talk to us about the church and the role it's played in really facilitating being a voice to the voiceless.
Well, the church has always been essential to the prophetic call of in the wilderness, even since Jesus' time. Jesus' first ministry was, his first sermon was about social justice. I've been called to take care of the poor, the needy, healing the brokenhearted, speaking truth to power. That was his first sermon. And so as we look at the faith community and the political throughout history. We know that faith leaders have played an integral part in shaping political and social movements. We've seen this from biblical prophets to contemporary clergy. We've seen this. So it's not new to the church. It's actually coming back to the roots of the church and the religious voices that have stood at the forefront of justice, advocating for the marginalized, holding governments accountable. That has always been a mission of the church, not just salvation, but how do our members live? How do our communities live in a just and moral society? That has always been a mission of the church. We have to engage in politics. There's not a separation of politics and our religious traditions. It's actually, again, a return to the roots of our religions and our tradition. Moses, Nathan, we can call the prophets of old and all the way up to contemporary now, Bishop William Barber. So it has always been faith leaders engaging in politics and changing policies for a just and moral society.
You talk about holding government accountable, and obviously we do have some challenges in government. And when we look at what's going on in Washington, D.C., let's talk about some of the initiatives that you're working on in terms of holding government accountable. I mean, a lot of people are talking about DI, immigration, but I'll let you take it away.
So what we're seeing, we need to address Congress. We need to address those leaders that are allowing this abuse of unchecked power, challenging political leaders when policies contradict our moral and ethical principles, DEI, and we need to stop saying the acronym and really calling out that is diversity, equity, and inclusion. When we begin to have these conversations, we got to begin to ask people, what are you against diversity? What are you against equity? What is it that you're against in inclusion? We begin to have to look at this, challenging this moral narrative, false moral narrative that's out there that our faith community is against DEI. Mobilizing communities, encouraging civic engagement, beginning to have our faith communities go to school board meetings, go to city council meetings, go to your general assembly, go to your state capitol, and begin letting your elected officials know we are your constituency. You got to begin to have a policy that advocates for the marginalized, the ostracized, the left out, reinforcing funding back into communities that are being defunded. Look at our educational system and look at all of our schools that are having to be Title I schools, and that funding, that money is being shifted to privatized education. These are things that we as a faith community can begin to challenge on the local level. So we got to begin to intercede and begin to be that prophetic voice in the wilderness. Can't just be in the churches, but it actually has to be in the public square as well.
Yeah, and when we talk about being in the public square, obviously that's, no easy feat. Having people be engaged politically, socially, and taking on the mantle of social justice. It's hard for a lot of people who say, listen, I have no faith in government. I have no faith in that there will be justice served. What's your message for people in regards to engagement? Because when we talk about engagement, we understand, that there are a lot of people who are apathetic about the situation simply because either failure to affect change or broken promises.
So we have an obligation to be prophetic voices. We cannot be passive observers. The church cannot afford to remain silent in the face of any injustice. The world needs modern day Moses, Esthers, Martin Luther Kings, who were courageous enough to stand for righteousness. We got to begin to speak boldly against oppression and racism and economic justice. Mobilize our communities. It's not just registering to vote. It's not just actually going to vote. But what after that? What's after the ballot? We got to begin to push for righteous policies. We got to refuse to be manipulated politically while maintaining our moral clarity. We can't just be jumping and bouncing at headlines and sound bites, but we really got to stand in solidarity, really be strategic and intentional as faith leaders. I think it was the theologian Howard Thurman that said the masses of men live with their backs against the wall. And so the moral and spiritual question we have to do today is, what do we do about it? We got to come together. We have to be the answer, not just in the pulpit, but in the public square. You can begin at your local church organizing and beginning to be civically engaged with your elected officials on your local level. The time right now is for prophetic action.
Right.
So will our churches rise up to the occasion?
So when you talk to the average person now. I mean, let's say, listen, I'm out here watching, and I'm seeing what's going on. I don't like what's going on, but then again, I really feel like my vote doesn't matter. I really feel like I don't like the whole government thing, and yeah, how would you engage me to say, listen, you know what? It's important. You need to be active, and you need to take watch.
How would I engage you? First thing I would ask, what's important to you? If you say your family is important, so okay, let's look at these things that are affecting your family: education, living wages, where you could actually live. Redlining is a real thing. They might have changed the name of it, but it's still there. Where they're moving and defunding communities. So that's my first question. Not whether you're registered to vote, not whether you love the government or not, but what do you care about? I think they call them table topic issues. The food that goes on the table for my family, the pricing of it. So that's how I begin to engage them. And then from there, okay, if your concern is education of your children, then I have to begin to ask the question: when was the last time you was at a school board meeting? When was the last time you had a conversation with your educators in your community, at the school that your children are going with? Then from there, you begin to look at a plan of action as a concerned citizen, as a parent. If you don't have any children, but you're a concerned citizen because of um, crime in your community, okay, begin to look at: is it because there's no resources there? Is it because nobody's paying attention? Is it need to be a gun reform? Is it need to be a police accountability? We begin to have to look at what people care about. That's the first act of engagement. If I was engaging a faith community, my first thing would be: if you're looking at your congregation, what affects your people? And then me as a minister, me as a leader within that church, I would begin to look at that, begin to say, okay, this is how we can address this. Is there environmental waste in your area? Or, then we can begin to look at this. So you have to figure out what people care about first. And then that's how you begin to engage them into civic engagement.
Well, one thing people are talking about for sure is voter suppression, and
Yes.
that was pretty heavy, right? And we saw that in this last election. We saw it in the election prior. We've seen it in several elections, and one would think that since Dr. King and John Lewis that we would not be talking about voter suppression still in 2025. Yet and still it's real, yet and still it's relevant. And I'll ask the question: what are we doing here in the area of voter suppression, particularly in your neck of the woods?
I do know that there is some lawsuits against the voter suppression laws. So that's in act. What if your vote was not important? This is what I want everybody to understand. If your vote was not important, why do they need to suppress it? If there was not power within the people, then why are there discounting votes? I think in North Carolina, they're still trying to discount 60,000 votes. So if your um, vote was not important, if your voice was not important, they would not be trying to silence it. So yes, we need to continue to be engaged in registering people to vote, but also educating people on the power of their vote. As we've seen it since 2024. There's been so many voter suppression laws. I think it was within 19 states. There's over 1,000 voter suppression laws that are also active, and also um, um, they are becoming law. So we have to look at those things.
Yeah. As we draw down, I want to get a chance to get your take on activism, because obviously you are a person that's politically and socially active. And we're trying to look now to see where those next leaders are coming from. And we know a lot of them are young people that are coming up right up in the ranks. However, when we talk about activism, we also do say that there's some apathy there too, right? And what do we, so, when you see activism, when you see being that voice and that voice for the voiceless, how do you see its future?
I say more are young people doing it, but I also um, want our young people to walk alongside those heroes that have already walked that walk. There's always that passing from the elders to the youth. Civil disobedience is a moral choice, is the only moral choice, and so activism, regardless of age, um, is prevalent. What we need to also understand, it is the one thing that changes the arc of justice is activism, and everybody can be a part of it. for a moral and just society. So our pastors, our faith leaders, our young people, do not tell a young person they're too young to walk. They're too young to speak out, because we need all those voices. We need a collective voice. The sound of the shofar, that loud voice, that loud sound that says that we will not stand for injustice anywhere in this country.
Yeah. And as you look at today and we see where we are today and what's happening in Washington, D.C., what are some of the initiatives that you guys are working on right now that maybe we need to be paying attention to?
Let's begin to attack your state capitals. Congress does have the power to stop most of the things that are happening. So we have to begin to have a strategic plan that begins to protest, that begins to engage our elected officials on the state level. We can start from local, absolutely, but then we need to move it up the states and begin to look at Congress. Hey, Congress, what are y'all doing? Are y'all allowing these things to happen and occur when you know that they're even against the Constitution, and yet you still stay silent? So we got to start attacking our Congress.
As for people who want to find out more information, how do they get connected? What do they do?
There are so many. Poor People's Campaign, you can sign on. You can go to the website of Poor People's Campaign. Repairers of the Breach is also the other organization that you can sign on to. Prophetic Council under the Repairers of the Breach is for all faith and moral leaders to be a part of. We do have a lot of faith-led things planning, and so joining the Prophetic Council on the Repairers of the Breach website would be a way of staying engaged and staying in contact with the actions that we're going to be planning moving forward.
And I know you've worked very closely with Dr. William Barber, one who is very much the bishop, we call, of the social justice movement these days. Talk to me about what you've gleaned from him, what you've learned from him, and what you've implemented into your own, into your own workspace.
Moral analysis. You have to look at what is happening behind the headlines. So one of his favorite and one of his most profound statements is, do not be loud and wrong. So you have to do your research. You have to look at the facts and then do a moral analysis of the time. And then there's moral articulation. Now that I have this moral analysis of what is happening in this Pharaoh moment, okay, then the moral articulation, how do I begin to apply it? And then the moral agenda. Let me set out my agenda of how I'm going to engage people, how I'm going to connect with my state officials and begin to say this budget is not helping out the least, the lost, and the left out, and then having moral action. Where do I begin to protest? Where do I begin to have civil disobedience? Where do I begin to do an email campaign or a writing campaign or a calling campaign to let them know we are paying attention to our elected officials? So those are the four things that he has taught me. Have a moral analysis. Don't just jump and run at a headline or a soundbite, but really sit down and begin to look at a moral lens. What is happening in society? What is happening in the government? What is happening in our communities? Then have that moral articulation. Now, how do I take that moral analysis and begin to articulate it out into the communities where everybody can understand and get engaged? Then I have my moral agenda. These are the things we're going to be doing. Hit the state capitals. Begin to look at mobilizing communities in civil disobedience, teaching, protests, those particular things. And then the moral action, let's come together collectively and begin to, let's get back into the streets. Let's get back into the streets.
Dr. Hanna Broome, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us, and great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All righty. We are taking a quick break, and guess what? We'll be back with more coming up right after this.
What's up, creative family? Discover your voice with BronxNet community media classes. Are you ready to bring your ideas to life? At BronxNet, we offer television production classes for community members ages 18 and over, empowering you to share your vision with the world. Get certified in field production, in-studio production, and our new exciting addition, podcast production. Once certified, you can create your own show to air on one of our 6 TV channels. It all starts with our free Unleash Your Ideas Masterclass, designed to help you plan your show idea and set you up for success on your production journey. This class is offered at the beginning of each month for your convenience. Our dedicated BronxNet team is here to support, encourage, and uplift you every step of the way. Join us and become a part of the creative force that engages and inspires the Bronx community and beyond. Sign up today and start your media journey with BronxNet. Visit bronxnet.org/education to learn more and register. Let's create something amazing together.
And welcome back. The Bronx is facing an unprecedented housing crisis where skyrocketing rents and widespread displacement are leaving thousands of residents struggling to keep a roof over their heads. The borough has become a battleground. Tenants organizing rent strikes, forming unions, mobilizing communities to take a stand against negligent landlords. Join me now, a tenant and housing advocate, Community Action for Safe Apartments CASA leader, Fitzroy A. Christian. Fitzroy, thanks for joining us.
And thank you for having us with you today.
Yes.
And a Happy New Year to you and BronxNet and the Social Justice Forum.
Thank you. We receive all of that, and certainly it is a Happy New Year in some ways and not so happy in other ways. I mean, I think when we talk about what's going on in the state of New York City, and particularly when it comes to rent and rent regulation, tell me from your perspective, how are you viewing things?
It's a crisis that I guess no one could have expected. We know that because housing is a commodity in New York State and New York City, virtually in the entire United States, that there would be problem because anything that is subject to market manipulation is going to be problematic. But the extent of the homelessness crisis and the unhomed crisis and the way that the courts themselves are a part of the problem in the increase in homelessness has made it worse than any of us could have expected. And this is why we are battling so ferociously for things to happen at the state level and at the city level to make sure that we don't see this unprecedented increase in evictions to the courts, through families giving up their homes because they cannot afford to stay here in their neighborhoods. We need to see this addressed thoroughly, and we need to see it stopped because it is very destructive, and too many families are suffering physically, mentally because of the trauma they're going through with the uncertainty of being housed and staying in their communities.
First of all, when I think about where we are right now, and I think about the fact that the Bronx is, leading the nation when it comes to, health and, bad health. I think about the Bronx in unemployment and the numbers that are there. There's some numbers that we're not proud of. And then when we talk about the rising rent costs and the amount of people who've been affected by the rent crisis, we add that now to the list. It's got to be burdensome for the average person who's trying to just basically make ends meet, because as I was sharing with someone just a little while ago, the cost of just being able to afford to eat, and then also the cost to be able to afford to live, there's no money left over. And people are, and then paying rent, right? So when you see that, what are you hearing from your tenants today?
Okay, what we are doing is mounting a series of campaigns, which we hope to be successful at. And the success will bring a certain amount of relief, even though it may be temporary. At least there is some relief. Some of the activities, some of the actions we are taking is mounting a campaign for a rent freeze for the upcoming year, and hopefully for the 4 years of the next mayoral term, for the next 4 years. We have already held at least two town halls, where we are demanding that those who are wanting to replace Eric Adams commit themselves to a rent freeze during their administration if they are successful at becoming the next mayor, because tenants need that. The landlords have been making historic profits in the area of about 30+ % annually, year after year, for the last 35 years. They do not need another year of rent increase. During the 3 years so far of Mayor Adams' term in office, his time in office, the rents have gone up 9.5%. This is very burdensome. Too many people cannot, as you just said, they cannot afford to eat and pay rent, take care of their families, clothing their children. They have to make choices that human beings should not have to make. Do I have a good meal or do I pay my rent? Do I take a chance of being evicted because I don't pay my rent so that I can take my medicines the way they're supposed to be taken, instead of taking half of the medication, as a lot of seniors do, so that they could stretch it out so they do not have to spend any more money for their medication. And so they cannot heal properly because they're not taking the full doses of their medication. And if they do that, then they don't have enough money left over to eat or to pay their rent. These are choices that we should be making as human beings. And this is why we are fighting for a rent freeze, so that tenants and all people will have an opportunity to be able to eat, pay their rent, take their medications, and at least take their kids or grandkids out for a little entertainment at least once a month. We need this, we need that, and we need the candidates who are running for mayor to understand that and to be willing to commit themselves to having, if not for the full 4 years of their term, at least 2 years that is a rent freeze, to allow tenants and the residents of New York City to catch up.
As you're walking the streets of the Bronx and talking to fellow Bronx tenants, what are you hearing?
Apart from the immigration scare, which the new federal administration has brought in, we are hearing that they can no longer afford to stay in New York, even though Bronx is probably the cheapest of the 5 boroughs in terms of housing. The Bronx is under attack. Landlords, real estate corporations are focusing on the Bronx. This is the last area where they can colonize, if we want to use that phrase, and where they could make tremendous profits, because when they move tenants out of their current homes and those buildings become available, it is possible for them to build or to upgrade the buildings and be making 2-3 times the amount of rent that they're making now under the rent stabilized laws. Yeah. And this we cannot afford. The city is still giving away public money to these real estate folks, to the developers, and we're not getting anything back substantial in exchange for the monies, our monies that are being given away in this major corporate welfare system here in New York City and New York State.
You got the Bronx.
We are losing.
I'm sorry.
We are losing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. You go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I think I heard a pause and I jumped in too quick.
Okay. We as tenants and residents of New York City, and here in the Bronx in particular, are losing any way we turn. The city is not protecting us. The borough president is not protecting us. Our city council members are fighting, but the city hall administration is pushing back. And if we can recall that Mayor Adams himself is a landlord, and he has been getting a whole lot of money from the real estate industry for his campaigns, that his allegiance is then very subject to, I should say, we have to suspect, it has to be suspect who does he really care for? The folks who voted for him or the folks who gave him money to run his campaign? So the decisions that he is making, we see the trend where they are almost always favoring landlords and the real estate industry, and almost always an onus on the back of the tenants who will seem to be carrying the load and paying the penalty for the success and the further enrichment of the landlords.
Yeah. When it comes to evictions, seeing record numbers of, in some cases we're seeing record numbers of evictions. Talking to some legal attorneys, they're saying that things are bad, they're not as bad. What are you seeing on your end when it comes to evictions?
That they are worse than many of us want to admit.
So you do see it as bad?
Yes, I think it is very, very bad. The problem is that the court, the Chief Justice, Mr. Wilson, excuse me, my phone just went off. I don't know if you could hear me or you could see me.
I can. You're good. Just keep talking. I see you and hear you.
Okay. What is happening is that the Chief Justice is more concerned about clearing the calendar of cases that are hanging out on the dockets, rather than making sure that the people who come to court do get their justice, that they do get the right that was given in 2017 under the de Blasio administration to have an attorney in court. The Office of Civil Justice is holding on to a lot of money, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that they're not releasing to the civil legal services organizations to hire more attorneys. So what is happening? People who meet the criteria for free legal representation are going through the court system without that protection, without that representation. They do not know the laws. They do not have the ability to fight back against the attorneys for the landlords who do this every day in court. So what is happening that they're losing their cases, and in the same vein, they're losing their homes. They're being evicted, not because they did something wrong, but because they do not have the ability to protect themselves, to assert their rights, and to introduce the type of information that the court would have to take into consideration for the behavior, the bad behavior of the landlords, not doing their repairs in a timely manner and not doing them properly, not providing the services that they're legally obliged to provide under the terms of the lease. They do not meet, in most cases, the standards set by the city for the building codes. But most of us as tenants do not know how to assert those rights, how to use that as a part of our defense so that we can get the landlords to be held responsible through the courts to be doing these things. And when they are forced to sign stipulations or agreements with the landlord's attorneys, those agreements are always one-sided, where the obligation is on the tenant to do everything, even though they're not responsible for what is happening in the buildings. And the landlord gets away scot-free because those stipulations do not include an obligation on the landlord to do the repairs or to provide those services that they're supposed to.
Yeah. From your own personal perspective, you got your own personal story. Share it a little bit with us.
Yeah, I came into this tenant organizing about 20 years ago because I had a problem with my landlord. There was a big water break, main break on Jerome Avenue that took out Con Ed services for quite a while until they fixed it. Because of the resulting problems, an increase in my electricity bill eventually, no gas for 8 months, no repairs were being done, and the elevators were broken. I began to talk to other tenants and try to form a tenant association so that we can collectively approach the landlord and say, hey, look, these are the things that are going on. You need to correct it. We need to start be living here with some dignity, and you need to do something about it. I found myself kind of overwhelmed, and so I began to ask, where in the Bronx can I find help? And I was pointed to CASA. CASA was about 3 years old, 4 years old at that time. And like I said, the rest is history. CASA, the organizers, came to my assistance. We were able to get the landlord moving, to get the gas reinstalled, to get the services that we were entitled to restored. And since then, I have become a member and a crusader for CASA and for the work that they're doing. I'm now a leader, a member leader in the organization. And I teach the gospel of tenant organizing, of tenants forming tenant associations, of them becoming a member of organizations like CASA. There are a few of them here in the Bronx, the Northwest Bronx, Mothers on the Move, South Bronx United. We have quite a few groups that work with tenants. And so I say, depending on where you live, join one of these groups.
Right.
Because these groups will work for you on your behalf, and it's almost always at no cost to you as a tenant, as a resident. So you're not losing, and you have so much to gain. This way, we as tenants can become united, we can become organized, and we are then in a much better place to fight back and assert our rights and get what it is that we deserve, especially after the victories we won with the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act in 2019.
Yeah. Fitzroy, I tell you, you've done a great job, and certainly thank you for being with us. We'll continue to update our viewers on these tenant issues and the matters of tenants and housing and this housing crisis that continues to not just only burden New York City, but more specifically right here, the borough of the Bronx, with these increasing rates. So thank you so much for joining us, Fitzroy. Glad to have you.
And thank you for having me, and continue the good work. You have been spreading that message out, and people have commented that they have seen the show, they have heard what you and seen what you're doing, and we appreciate that. Wow. Getting this message out is very, very important, because the more people are aware of it, the more they take the opportunity to take advantage of what it is that is being offered to them. Yes. And we appreciate everything that you're doing to make that possible.
Well, thank you. Thank you. All right, Fitzroy. Well, we come to the end of our show today. Hope you enjoyed this week's discussion on the Social Justice Forum. If you want to rewatch the next episode, or I should say this week's edition, you can catch it right here on the Bree Cablecast here on BronxNet.org. If you want to join the next episode and present your point of view, visit our social media at BronxNet TV. Join us next week. We'll continue to elevate the discussion, bring further awareness on the issues across the globe. I'm Daren Jaime saying take care. God bless.